business. They kind of sugarcoat and hide the truth. Now, I read one of Tony's many LinkedIn posts recently where he said, "Thank you so much to all the wonderful people who are giving their time and skills and expertise to support micro-business owners and to tell the truth." And those words, "tell the truth," really resonated with me. If I told the truth of my 20 plus years in business, I kind of have this feeling it's not really going to inspire that many people to start up in business, really. If I told the truth of how my first business failed, where I had to make people redundant, where my investors lost all their money, and where I lost my home and all my dreams with it, I don't really think that will be classified as inspirational. And if we look at the truth behind the headlines for micro-business owners, particularly of things like financial support for the self-employed during the pandemic, or small businesses especially struggling to get paid in 90 days, let alone 30 days, you could be forgiven for wondering why anyone would even want to go down the route of starting up in business. But here we are, folks. The thing is, the truth can be liberating. It shows a rawness and an honesty that actually is missing so often in the business world. And if we're honest about our struggles, what is it that we're fearful of? Do we think people will see that as a weakness? Do we think they won't want anything to do with us? Well, yeah, that's happened to me. When I tell my story of having a failed business behind me, I see people physically walking away from me. Whoop. No, thank you. And there are people like that, but they're probably not the kind of people I want in my life. But what about the other people? What about those that Tony was talking about, who are passionate, who care, who are there to give their time and their skills and the expertise and help? And that kind of support is absolutely priceless. Now, I met Tina and Tony, as he just said, many moons ago on Twitter. That's where we first connected in April 2011. Now, meeting people on Twitter can be a really hit and miss affair, right? We've all been, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Tina. You know what I'm talking about. It can be proper hit and miss. But I knew from the start there was something really quite unique about these two. They had a passion and a belief, but more than that, they had a drive to want to make change, for the truth to be told about the reality of running a micro business. They made me stop and think about my own situation, but also about the kind of 5 million plus and counting micro businesses and the human beings behind that. And our first year of working together, how would I describe it, Tony? A little bit crazy, a little bit crazy, but we kind of got on really, really well. And finally, the launch came as what Tony's just said, actually, are very affectionately known as Enterprise Rockers. I have to say, with a name like that, of course, we went on to have band leaders, didn't we? Remember the band leaders? Yeah. Okay. And also, I'm still looking in the Oxford Dictionary to see if Enterprise Rockers actually will make it one day. You never know. You never know. Since then, the MicroBizMatters movement has grown and evolved to what we know and love today. Fantastic people willing to give their time and expertise to help and support others. And I just want to take a moment just to pause and just think about that and to celebrate that, because it's down to Tina and Tony ultimately. It isn't just their passion and their belief, but I can tell you it's their money that started all of this as well. So I'm just going to pause and we should give a round of applause to Tina and Tony. Marvellous. So in my business, as Tony said, I work with families and teachers to help nurture in children from the age of 3, so real little tots, a can-do mindset and life skills. And they do that through screen-free, so away from the screen, everyday play. And the thing about a can-do mindset is it's easy to fall into that sort of view that it's all about sort of success. It's actually as much about making mistakes and letting our children make mistakes and what we learn about ourselves in that process as anything else. And of course, when you're young, winning can be everything, and failure can, you know, when you're 8, 9, 10, can feel like literally like the end of the world. But it is possible to help children think differently about failure and about making mistakes, and looking at how they respond and how they learn about themselves when things don't quite work out. And it's that learning along with other skills, such as understanding how we work well with other people, to be creative, resourceful, resilient, those values as well, and which are going to help them super, super well when they go on to grow up and do whatever it is they go and do. And that might include starting a business. So how do we do that? How do we nurture in children that mindset, those skills and values in the next generation? Well, we as role models, with our honesty and our passion, have a really big part to play. Now, I've already mentioned 2 amazing role models, Tina and Tony, but what about the rest of us? Okay. What happens when we engage with children and young people? Now, it might be your own children, but it could be your grandchildren. It could be cousins, nephews, nieces, family, friends. Or it may be that your work brings you into contact with children and young people. And how we talk about business is really important. So one of the things I do is I go into schools, and one of the first questions I ask is, how many of you know someone who runs a business? And the first time I ask that question, hardly anyone in the class puts their hands up. Hardly anyone at all. And I think, right, okay. And what they're doing is they're thinking about big business. They're thinking about the stuff they see on the telly, right? They're thinking about the stuff they might see on Dragon's Den. So when I say to them, what, none of you go to a hairdresser's then? None of you got a family car that needs servicing? No? So we open up the conversation. And then I ask the question again. I say to them, how many of you know someone who runs a business? Pretty much everyone puts their hands up. So what does that tell us about, apart from the fact that the media's got quite a lot to answer for in terms of how business is presented? Well, maybe the micro businesses of this world, the electricians, the beauticians, the plumbers and so on, are just getting on doing their stuff, delivering all those amazing products and services that we kind of almost take for granted. And then when they're not there one day, we're all a bit shocked. And what do we do then with our children? How do we talk with them about the fact that the next hairdresser's closed down, or actually my local garage is just about to close down, which is gutting? What's the conversation that we have with our children and young people then? Now, there are days, and we all know this, and I've definitely been there, where the love and even the passion for what we do isn't enough. But how honest can we be about that without scaring the next generation away from starting a business and seeing that as an option for them? And here's the thing. The reality is most of these children and young people will grow up to either work in a micro business, because there's 5 million plus and counting, or start a micro business themselves. So imagine an eyes wide open approach to learning that supports them to develop the crucial skills, the characteristics, the value, things like problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, decision making, alongside nurturing their mindset, so that whatever they've got that lies ahead, the challenges and the opportunities, then they're well equipped. Now, I don't shy away from telling pupils in schools about my business failure, because they need to know that's the kind of thing that can happen. But what I always share is how I came back from it, who supported me with that, what I went on to do next, what my learning was, not just about the business side of it, but learning about me and how I handle challenges, and Crucially, how bad I was back then at actually asking for help. And that was fundamentally the downfall for me. And I don't stand there and I don't tell them you can do anything, because I don't know them. That's the truth. I don't know how many of those children have been or are being supported in nurturing their mindset and their life skills to help them thrive in the world. But our role as parents or grandparents or friends is to engage in conversation about what it means to start and run a business, the highs and the lows, but to talk about that feeling right here, that feeling that it's love, really, with access to the most amazing network of people also doing the same, standing alongside us, and how powerful that is, that against all the odds, here we all are, getting on, doing our stuff. And the attitudes we have and share are what our children and young people will also learn. Every word we say, every conversation we have really, really matters, whether it's about money or career options or business. And the mindset of having faith in ourselves is what psychologists call self-efficacy, can be set very early on when we're children, very, very young. And a positive sense of self, or what we call high self-efficacy, is shown over and over again to support us and make us more resilient and more when stress or adversity comes knocking. So don't we owe it to our next generation to help them be the best they can, to develop a strong sense of themselves, their place in the world, the self-efficacy to be successful, whatever that means to them. It's not for us to define what success means. It's for them to determine that for themselves. And we know that children learn more by what we do than what we say. And they're watching us all the time, which is just a little bit scary sometimes as a parent, I have to say. How we engage our verbal responses to that will impact on how they feel. We might motivate them, we might demotivate them, depending on what we say. But our actions, when we're faced with difficulties or crises in our business, is even more important. And that's how we role model. Of course, we need to express our feelings, of course we do. But if all we do is blame the government or blame our suppliers, that's not really showing the other side. That's not really showing our self-efficacy, our confidence in ourselves to be able to analyse, think things through and turn things around. Or in the case of Tina and Tony, launch some amazing campaigns like Pay in 30 Days or Excluded UK. And the thing is, we can't always shape the world to how we want it to be. And COVID has taught us that, right? The world may decide to impose itself on us, and how we deal with that might be restaurants. My local restaurant turned to doing takeaway beer menus, or in my own case, running my workshops for families online. How we do that models the can-do way, the can-do mindset in a very practical and often innovative way. Now, I'm often asked about praise. This is quite a big thing. How do we praise children? Is it, should we not praise them? Should we praise them? And talking to a child and saying they've done a great job when they know they really, really haven't even tried, that's probably not very helpful, and it's certainly not honest. It's far better to say, you know what, I guess maybe you had a bit of an off day. Maybe it wasn't your best game. You can be honest with the praise, but you can focus on the effort that they put in rather than the results. And encourage them to do things like helping others to think outside of themselves, just like the MicroBizMatters movement does, builds a child's self-esteem and positive feelings. And it's not just children, right? How good do we feel when we're able to help another micro business? Fantastic. And allowing children to make mistakes and supporting them to learn, not just about themselves, but also, how they respond. It's crucial, as I've said, because that's the reality of life. We will all make mistakes. We will all make errors of judgment. So the next time you say to someone, especially a young person, you can do this, believe in yourself, just remember what lies behind that they need the skills and support of the mindset to make that happen. And how are you going to support that? How are you going to help them on that road to success? And just before I finish, I want to mention about the language that we use with young people, not rude language, just language in general, particularly teenagers and those either taking exams or coming quite close into the world of work. So for so long now, it's almost in our DNA to ask the question, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? What are you going to do? Now, I've got a 15-year-old at home, sort of right in the thick of it at the moment, as you might imagine, hence the stress lines. And, it's really interesting because he hasn't got a clue, to be honest with you, pretty much like I didn't at that age. But he has somehow, I was watching him the other day, he's somehow managed to really skillfully kind of manoeuvre around it by talking about 2 or 3 subjects that he really enjoys. And then he kind of just wafts the question away, very skillfully. And the conversation ends. That's it. Now, as I say, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do when I was that age. I knew the kind of things that I enjoyed. I also knew the subjects I absolutely hated, and there'll be no surprises that maths and science were pretty much high up there on the latter. But changing the narrative with children, particularly teenagers, from what do you want to do to what kind of person would you like to be? How would you like people to see you in the future is incredibly powerful. It encourages them to reflect, to think about how they interact with people now, to think about how they want to be in the future. It's a very honest, very authentic question, and it can open up the most amazing conversations with young people. So I highly recommend trying that. So I've talked quite a bit around mindset and how we experience what we're growing up, which can, influence how we tackle challenges and opportunities that arise in the future. But as we know from this fantastic MicroBizMatters movement, there is so much more that needs to be done. Our micro businesses deserve better. Those starting up in business deserve better. And our children and young people who have their whole lives in front of them, they absolutely deserve better. And the theme of this year's MicroBizMatters is 1 million helping hands. And I just want to leave you with this thought. And I'm going to quote Walt Strytive here, who said, "There are no 7 wonders of the world in the eyes of a child. There are 7 million. And seeing the world through the eyes of a child can help us see the endless possibilities for change. With not just 1, but 7 million helping hands. Tony and Tina's vision has now created a legacy that I have no doubt will continue to help make life better for micro businesses. And for that, we will always be indebted." Thank you. That would have been better.
The rocking, wonderful Lorraine Allman. Thank you very much indeed. That was wonderful, wasn't it? Really, really nice. Great.